This is Bruce Edwin with the Hollywood Sentinel, and I'm speaking here today with Christine Argillet. Christine, hopefully I'm saying that somewhat correctly.
Perfect.
Wow, great.
Thank
I
you.
definitely need to work on my French. So, Christine, it's a real pleasure to meet you and speak with you here today. We are sitting here amongst a collection that you have brought over from France of Salvador Dali. And I am very, very impressed by some of the works. Can you tell me a bit, for our readers will, of course, have some of this information textually, but you grew up with Salvador Dali, essentially. Is that correct, with your father?
Well, I would say that as my father was a publisher of the Surrealist and Dadaist group,
Okay.
I grew up with many of them, and as my father had a passion for Dali, Dali is the one we met the most, I would say.
Okay.
We would spend all our summers in Spain in front of his house, and that was the only way my father had to get all his etchings. Otherwise, they were sold to other people. So we used to go all the summers there between, I would say, 1961, 60 even, and 1973.
Okay. And when you say you used to go there, where exactly was the location?
Well, Dali was living in a beautiful fisherman's house
Okay.
on the beach near Figueras in the north part of Spain.
Okay.
And fortunately, there were just 2 or 3 houses on this shore, but there was a hotel, a small hotel, which still exists, by the name of Gabriel, and we would stay there during the summer.
Wonderful. And around what age were you at this time?
That was between my age of 6 and 17.
6 and 17. Okay.
Yeah.
So many years. I've seen some images of you with Dali that are just beautiful images. And did you spend a lot of time with him as a young child and as a early, when you were becoming a teenager?
Well, you know, when we were in Spain, for instance, we would see Dali nearly each evening. He used to work a lot, especially on his oil paintings there. And he would start very early. We would see the light in his studio at 6, 7 in the morning,
Wow.
until 5, 6 in the afternoon, in the late afternoon. And then either we would come and see him at home, or sometimes he would come at our hotel. And it was nearly every day. So I was lucky enough to see him work, to see him paint, to see him invent different tools, different things which had nothing to see with my daily life, and which were which were amazing for me as a child or a teenager. That was great.
That's fascinating. That's so amazing. For, I think, anyone that even does not have a great knowledge of art history generally knows Salvador Dali. He's certainly one of the most famous painters in the world. What are some of your most favorite memories in his presence you can think of that really stick in your mind?
There were a lot of things which were stunning in his house and in his way of being, yet he was a very simple and humble person, which
Really?
might seem strange to you, because it's not what we see on TV when we see what has been recorded sometimes. But he was a very simple person, and he would, for instance, ask people who were in the village to come and see his paintings and to give him their vision of it. He would ask them if they would see this and this layer, this hidden character, this hidden landscape. And that was for him as important as somebody who would have had a very big knowledge in art.
Wow.
For him, he wanted to be universal, and there was this kind of very simple approach and huge respect towards anyone. That was one point, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
In his studio that we can visit now in his house, the house is open to the public since a few years.
Yes.
Nothing has changed. I would really engage anyone to go and see it.
Excellent.
It's a very beautiful house, simple again,
Okay.
and where different fishermen's houses are connected by a labyrinth.
Oh.
So when you look at this house, there are so many elements which are very Dalinian but very strange at the same time. He had, for instance, a big bear in the entrance, and this bear was huge. And I was very impressed by this bear, and I thought it was very particular to him. And there were a lot of umbrellas in the hands of this bear. And and there were a lot of things which were fun. For instance, he had a lot of books everywhere. He was very well read. He would know poetry by heart. He would have in his studio, sometimes you would see 2 easels. Usually he was working on a large-scale painting. And there was also on an easel a smaller work where you were surprised to see just geometrical lines. And when people were like looking at him and showing a sort of surprise, and Dali would say, yes, it's how I start. I start with the golden ratio. I study my painting for a very long time. I do a lot of sketches, and it's when everything is absolutely like I want in my mind that I start including the figuration in that, but not before. So you would see something totally geometrical. You wouldn't think it's Dali. You would think about Kandinsky or somebody like that.
Amazing. I'm going to change tapes, pardon me. And speaking here still with Christine. So he was very mathematical.
Very mathematical,
Okay.
that's very true. He wanted to be in a kind of Leonardo da Vinci of the 20th century. He had always this reference of the Renaissance, in his works.
Okay.
He admired a lot Leonardo, and he wanted to be as universal as Leonardo. So he wanted to have this knowledge of science and art at the same time. He would invite very often scientists in his studio, in his hotel, and there were a lot of people coming in his house, but mostly in his hotels in Paris.
Okay.
And that was stunning to see. You would see models, you would see comedians, actors, you would see singers, and scientists, and a lot of people, all as diverse as possible.
That's great. You mentioned that he was very had a simple life or practical. If I recollect you saying, was he very temperamental, or
I don't know what temperament means.
have like a? Was he very patient, or did he have a wild temper?
Yeah.
Easily to anger or calm?
He was extremely calm, always humorous, I would say, when he was with people.
Yeah.
Mostly whistling while he was painting. And very calm, very enthusiastic always. I never
great.
saw him depressed once in my life.
Wow.
He was very positive in his life, a workaholic. And for this reason, I would say extremely patient, because when you look at his paintings, there are so many details.
There are.
It's necessary for him to have had a fabulous patience.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't show like suffering of it. It was something he would love to achieve. And we have some documents at home about, for instance, the research he's doing on this and that pigment, on the way the artists in former centuries were using this and that chemicals, and what is the best to use. There are a lot of writings of his on those topics, which shows that he was very patient and working and coming again on the work, deconstructing, reconstructing all the time.
Interesting. A lot of, aside from his art, which of course is the main focus of Dali, but he also, as you said, was he got a lot of attention for. He was very flamboyant, very outrageous, and got attention to, of course, his appearance, his mustache, and that. Politically, he's also been quite controversial. Some people I've read, referred to him at one point as an anarchist, one point as socialist, or even fascist tendency. What is the truth on that? What was his politics?
Well, I would more refer to my father's opinion, because in the time I was a child or a teenager.
Yeah.
But what I have understood, Dali had absolutely no knowledge of politics, no understanding of politics. Yet he was totally against fascism, and he has painted some beautiful works, some paintings where you see a telephone line cut, and at an end there is Hitler, and the other end is connected with the world. There are a lot of elements on, for instance, there is a painting on the terrible aspects of the Spanish War, inner war. So he was absolutely not a fascist. He was certainly a little bit anarchist in his way of being. That's very true. First, because as a big artist, he had to deconstruct and reconstruct. He was able to envision the world in another way. So he was a sweet person, which is maybe not very visible on the TV broadcast that we have, but he was a very sweet person. But he had absolutely no understanding of things, and he would often refer to, I remember, to my father and say, "Oh, I'm going to meet this and that political person. What is he? What do you think he's doing? What do you think this party is?" But he would refer to others, and unfortunately, he made some statements which were very bad, because in order to shock, and that was a part of his persona, he wanted to shock in order to be viewed, to keep attention on himself. And he would do whatever to do that. So unfortunately, he said things to people that people took as is directly. And I remember a funny story. At the end of the 60s, he was in his hotel in Paris, and there were a lot of people everywhere, models and scientists, a lot of people questioning him. There was a TV recording, and the telephone rings. His secretary goes to the telephone and answers, and comes to Dali and says, "Well, there is an old..."
Speak a little louder, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there is an old lady downstairs in the lobby of the hotel who wants to have you sign a petition against torture. And Dali says, "It's really not the moment. Ask her to come back another day." And so the secretary answers. A few minutes later, the telephone rings again. And the secretary comes again and says to Dali, "Well, it's apparently an old lady and she cannot come back." And Dali, who was a very nice person, said, "Well, in this case, let her come, but it's really not an easy moment, but I'll do that rapidly." 2 minutes later comes an old lady at the door, very unpleasant, with a bad face. And she has a hat and eyeglasses, and she has a feather in the hat, and she is very unpleasant. And she comes directly to Dali without saying hello or anything. She says, "Dali, I want you to sign this petition against torture. That's absolutely necessary." And Dali takes a distance a little bit and says to her, "Well, Madame, that's a problem, because I love torture." and the lady to run out of the place. Yes, but the next day in the newspapers you had Dali loves torture.
That's a great story. Yeah, I mean, and it seems so like innocent for an artist today to say something just being silly or sarcastic.
Yeah, it was.
Well, that's certainly, and of course then there's not the constant communication there is today to try to correct things, right?
Yes, very true.
Well, I have two more questions for you, if I may. I don't want to take
Sure.
up too much of your time, and if she may have a question or two, if you don't mind. Aside from his obsession with art, did he have any other great obsessions that you know of, such as, well, I'll just let you please answer that.
This is a very difficult question, I would say, because it's true that Dali had a kind of second persona, and this persona was to appear in public and to make eccentricities and to have no limits in these eccentricities.
Yeah.
But my feeling is that it was not his real character, that he had much more pleasure reading, which was certainly a big activity of his. He would go also in the nature and look at the rocks around him, which had fantastic shapes, like the Mount Rushmore here. There was those kind of rocks, incredible rocks, and he was observing a lot. I think he had a big pleasure going to the theater, to movies. He knew a lot of comedians.
Okay.
But I would say that most of it was to use those elements for his own paintings.
Interesting. You were, some of the pictures I've seen, and you're still a lovely woman now, and then some of the pictures that I've seen, you were beautiful in those images with Dali. Was there ever a crush for either of you? I know you were terribly young, like 16, but did you have a crush on him or vice versa?
No, because I was very young. Okay. I would just say that I was feeling that my parents, my father especially, had an enormous admiration for him.
Yes.
And I would respect this admiration. I thought there were certainly very good reasons. I knew that Dali was a fantastic artist. I could realize that, yet I hadn't, as a child or a teenager, all the elements to figure out everything. And do we ever figure out everything? Certainly not.
Yeah.
But I think that, no, it was something like that. Yet he loved to sometimes play with me. I think looking at the kind of candid vision that a child would have on things. And again, it's the vision of others on his art. So sometimes he would tell me, what do you see? Do you see something hidden here? Or why don't you stand like that? I would like to draw this or that. And that would happen, but not that many times. I think he had a fabulous knowledge of the human body. He had a recollection of all the movements of everything. He could draw in a magnificent way.
Yeah.
And I think that he would use anyone or anything as something being able to reconsider something in his art, but not more than that. Yet he was very respectful and very charming.
That's wonderful. Did you ever model for him?
Not really. Maybe a few times he was looking at my feet and how I should put my feet, and that was a great thing he had to design, but no, not really. I wouldn't say so. No.
Well, being an appreciator of art and seeing some of the images of you as a young female with him, I'm sure he got inspiration from just your presence. So it's such a pleasure to meet you. And are there any final thoughts or comments you'd like to say about your life personally, or anything before I wrap up here?
I would say that there are many elements that have remained in my mind after seeing Dali, his way of working, his way of behaving. There are a few elements that I really admired. The first one was that he would consider everyone on the same level, and for me that was a huge quality that we don't find in everyone.
That's great.
And somebody, especially somebody known like him. His sense of freedom was extraordinary. And his possibility to reinvent things at any moment. These are maybe the three elements I would keep in mind. I would have kept in mind for all my life. Yes, I would say so.
Excellent. Well, Christine, it's a very pleasure to meet you and to speak with you, and I thank you very much. And I'm going to stop here momentarily and see if perhaps Maura has a question or two, if you don't mind. And thank you again so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I wish you great success with the show, and these works will have images of them.